Blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot.
That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not how this works.
Well, hello there and welcome to Nowhere to Hide. I'm Brian Hyde. Today we're going to be talking about how everything we don't like is a voucher, or at least that seems to be the mantra from much of Idaho's legacy news media as well as Idaho's public education establishment. I'll show you why in just a few moments, but I know when school choice comes up, it seems like I'm forever just seeing this image of Colonel Jessup from A Few Good Men, you know, growling out his, "You want the truth? You can't handle the truth." And sometimes I feel like that's the standard that's applied to parents or others who say, we want choice in education. You want choice, you can't handle the choice. So Reclaim Idaho apparently has come up with a petition, and they're trying to get ahead of the Idaho legislative session starting in January, and particularly doing their best to head off school choice. Now, IdahoEdNews.org apparently is doing marketing for Reclaim Idaho, because look at this glowing article by Sadie Dittenber. Reclaim Idaho launches petition against school vouchers. Yes, they do link directly to the petition. Wink, wink, in case you need, a little nudge in the right direction. Reclaim Idaho, the group behind the 2018 Medicaid Expansion Initiative and a recent campaign to boost education funding, has launched a campaign against school vouchers in anticipation of the upcoming legislative session. Watch that word vouchers, because you're going to see it appear a lot throughout this article. The debate over vouchers and other means of directing public dollars, meaning taxpayers' dollars, toward private or non-traditional education has gained traction in Idaho and around the country in recent years. Now, pause for just a second and ask yourself, why might that be? Is it because the meanies, the conservatives, the far-right extremists are taking over? Or is it because parents recognize that there's something fundamentally wrong with the system, or it's not meeting their child's needs and they want to have that choice? Just have to understand that that traction that's being gained is likely not just an aberration. There's got to be a purpose behind it. I'm curious why IdahoEdNews.org doesn't really go into that. Some conservative lawmakers have pushed for a variety of school choice options, such as education savings accounts, tax credit programs, or scholarship funds. But Reclaim Idaho organizers are concerned that vouchers would defund rural schools, raise property taxes, and harm student achievement, according to the petition website. Harm student achievement. Really, we're going to come back to that in just a moment. Over the past 2 years, we at Reclaim Idaho have worked hard to secure funding for public schools, says Reclaim Idaho co-founder Luke Mayville. Thousands of volunteers have gotten involved with the goal of making sure we have strong public schools in every community. We see school vouchers as a direct attack on public schools. Now, see, I have no problem with there being strong public schools in every community, but I think the unspoken part of what he's saying is, and nothing else. In other words, if you want choice, you can choose from, it's like the old Model T. You can have any color you want, as long as it's black. Vouchers were also a hot topic in the lead up to the November elections. Democratic state superintendent candidate for Terry Gilbert clung to voucher opposition as one of the main tenets of his campaign. Now, his Republican opponent, now state superintendent-elect Debbie Critchfield, voiced her support for school choice, but she said she doesn't want to voucherize the public education system or put rural schools at risk. In other words, yeah, she's dipping a toe in the water of school choice, but doesn't want to embrace actual choice, which I guess is kind of the problem with a number of Republican members of the state legislature. They'll talk the talk, but when it comes to walking the walk, they're not so good at it. Now let's take a look at some of the rhetorical sleight of hand here. And that vouchers is the word that keeps recurring over and over again. I want to show you something similar. This is a guy I actually interviewed, Cody Wazinski, today about everything we don't like is a loophole, gun controllers' mantra. And it's true. This is on a number of different gun control issues around the country. Anything they don't like, they call it a loophole. And listen to his explanation. Progressives have been good at winning the language battle in recent years, particularly by manipulating language to evoke certain images and to lead to their desired conclusions. A prime example is their use of the word loophole, defined as a means of escape, especially an ambiguity or omission in the text through which the intent of a statute, contract, or obligation may be evaded. Now, when someone accuses another of exploiting a loophole, he implies that the other is escaping some legal obligation, exploiting a technicality to violate the spirit of the law. That sounds very much like what opponents of vouchers, or should I say school choice, are doing. But they use that word voucher as kind of a catch-all because school choice can involve a lot more than just vouchers. And it's the idea that there is competition or there are alternatives available where especially the money follows the student as opposed to simply being pushed into a system that already is struggling to do its job in educating students. So watch for that word voucher to be used over and over and understand it's a cuss word of sorts. It's designed to evince some kind of a gut reaction. Vouchers, we don't want that. Well, they'll destroy our schools. Let's go back for a moment here to the idea that, why is it that the Idaho ednews.org is on board with this? And I think Idaho Freedom Foundation rightly called them out on this, as well as the teachers' unions. Well, the teachers' unions out in force protecting a broken system. Meanwhile, thousands of West Ada kids can't do math or read at grade level. So instead of playing politics, maybe these teachers' unions should be spending more time on, educating students. Now, it's hard to see, but here are the numbers. If you look at the statewide percentage proficient in reading in fourth grade, 37%. Now, this is in West Ada School District number 2. Statewide percentage proficient in reading in 8th grade in this district, 37%. Statewide percentage proficient in math in 4th grade, 43%. Statewide percentage proficient in math in 8th grade in the West Ada School District, 37%. Okay, this is not to pick on teachers, it's not to pick on administrators, but can you look at those numbers and say, nope, that looks about right, everything's great? If your car's oil was down by, 63%, would you be like, oh, well, I'm sure it has some oil, and obviously it's working as it should? Or would you say, wow, there's a problem here, and maybe we need to do something about that? This is why school choice is needed. Now, back to the idea of, okay, so why is IdahoEdNews.org taking such an advocacy position in reporting on this particular petition? Why is every Reclaim Idaho petition a news story, Sadie? Idaho Freedom Action has done dozens of petitions, including a few on education choice, but you've never ever covered them, nor has Big Kev. We'd love to hear an explanation. Now, interestingly enough, this did draw a reaction from Kevin Reichert. And it's hard to see his response down there at the bottom. Oh, you mean like this one we didn't cover? Now, here's the headline. Inside the orchestrated efforts to support or oppose a $410 million education bill. The date on this, October 19th of 2022. The bill was passed back in September, after which Reclaim Idaho withdrew their petition. So this is after the fact. Yes, we wrote about your petition, but it was only, to cast doubt on why it was there in the first place. And Kevin thinks he's not doing marketing for Reclaim Idaho. This news story came weeks after IFA's petition, and it didn't even link to the petition. But the Idaho Ed news story for Reclaim is a press release for Governor Mayville designed to funnel more signatures to the petition. Do you see the difference? Do you understand? This is more than just, hey, we're just reporting the news and, letting you decide. We're pushing you, maybe even shoving you hard in the direction that you need to go. Oh, and here's a few buzzwords to scare you. Voucher, to make sure that you're stepping along. I want to refer to an article that was published by IdahoFreedom.org, by the Idaho Freedom Foundation. This was written by Caitlin Shepard, published back on November 11th, talking about the different myths that are being promoted regarding school choice. Oh, why it's such a bad thing. It'll destroy the rural districts. It's going to, harm academic achievement and so forth. These are just a couple of observations that Caitlin has in her article. And I strongly recommend you really need to read it and then decide for yourself. School choice benefits participants in other ways. For instance, multiple studies have discovered that voucher and tax credit scholarship students are more likely to graduate, enroll in college, and persist in college than their public school peers. Students are suffering from declining or stagnating academic performance in the existing system. I think we just saw the numbers for this in the Ada West District. But school choice promises to improve academic performance for all students. And here's the conclusion. Given the Idaho School Board Association's track record of opposing school choice programs like Hope and Opportunity Scholarships, the draft resolution they drew up opposing school choice appears likely to pass. Idaho students and families deserve the freedom to choose an education suited to their unique needs. Policymakers who care about providing the best education for every student in Idaho should take ISBA's recommendations with a grain of salt and put the needs of the students ahead of the system. I think that's a very reasonable thing to point out. Now, no doubt it's portrayed as, well, it's, just far right people with dark money trying to take over the system here. And yet, I'm sorry to be so blunt, but one of the ways that leftists reproduce is through indoctrinating other people's children. And in a completely locked down, one-size-fits-all, state-run school system, that's a lot easier to do. When parents actually have choice, when they have the ability to send their kids to where their education is best suited by another way, another approach, that seems to work the best for the kids, but it doesn't work so well for those who are intent on trying to mold young minds into strong young socialists for the regime. So in the back of my mind, I just want to see Colonel Jessup's face when parents actually have the option of school choice. And some parents are going to choose to stay right where they are in the public schools. It works for them. And there's nothing wrong with that. And those parents who do find a better way to educate their kids should have the option of doing so. Now, if that means keeping more of their own money so that they can do so, so be it. But let's not pretend that all this is just coming out of the taxpayers' pockets and somehow it's harming the schools. You give people choice, believe it or not, they will use it correctly. Why? Well, because it turns out that not only can they handle the choice, but they can make the right choices on their own. This is what Colonel Jessup's face should look like. Oh. We'll be talking more about this, I'm sure, with the upcoming session. This is a very hot button topic, and it's certainly going to bring a lot more friction out as educational choice is debated. And, watch for the dirty tactics. All I'm asking you to do is question when you hear buzzwords like vouchers and loopholes and that kind of thing, and just wonder if it's supposed to evince some kind of an emotional response. Is someone trying to hack your thinking? I'm Brian Hyde, and this is Nowhere to Hide.
Are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm crying.
Nobody wants to see
Dark money is influencing policy in our state.